It all started with a robbery, but what followed wasn't about money. It was about time itself. Three strangers trapped in a frozen forest, each convinced they're from a different year, 1962, 2011, and even the future. As their realities twist and collide, dark secrets unravel, revealing that bloodlines, betrayal, and fate are far more connected than they ever imagined. The movie begins as a girl named Jody and her boyfriend Kevin arrive at a convenience store. They suddenly point a gun at the cashier and demand all the money from the register. The cashier obeys and Kevin leaves with the money, but Jody notices a safe behind the counter and demands that the cashier open it. Surprisingly, the cashier remains calm and tells her she won't like what's inside. He then provokes her, saying that of all the things she could have done in life, she chose to do this. A furious Jody begins a countdown, and moments later, a loud gunshot rings out. The scene shifts to a forest where a woman named Samantha is walking, clearly terrified. She spots a small cabin in the distance and runs toward it, hoping for help. Samantha finds the place empty, though there is an old radio, a chair, a bed, and a bag containing some food. But then she notices a man carrying an axe approaching the cabin, so she quickly hides. The man enters the cabin while Samantha is under the bed. He takes his bag of food and leaves, causing Samantha to sigh in relief. Moments later, she runs out of the cabin, only to bump into the man from before. She trips and falls hard on her leg, but the man, whose name is Tom, turns out to be surprisingly kind and offers to help her. The two return to the cabin where Tom carefully tends to her wounds. Samantha apologizes for stealing his food and admits she hasn't eaten since yesterday. She explains that her car broke down last night and her husband went to a nearby gas station, but never came back. Samantha asks if he has a phone, but Tom confirms he doesn't, and the old radio doesn't work. He shares that he also had car trouble and has been stranded here for 3 days. Hearing this, a frightened Samantha wants to leave to find her husband, but Tom warns that the temperature outside could reach -5 degrees Celsius at night. Next, the two head to Samantha's car, where Tom discovers it's out of fuel. Samantha asks what happened to his car, and Tom reveals he had a minor accident and wrecked it. After leaving a note for Samantha's husband, Adam, the two take some blankets from the car and head back to the cabin. Later, Tom gives Samantha some water he got from a nearby stream, but strangely, when he went back, he couldn't find it. Tom wonders why her husband left her in the car, so Samantha explains that it's because she's pregnant. Hearing this, Tom offers to sleep on the floor and gives her the bed, promising to get her out of here. In the next scene, Samantha has a nightmare where she tries to scream while writhing in pain. When she wakes up, Tom is gone, but she is shocked to find an unconscious blonde woman lying just outside. She drags the woman inside, as Tom is seen siphoning gas from his vehicle to use in Samantha's car. Soon after, the blonde woman wakes up and turns out to be Jody from the opening scene. She is surprised by her whereabouts, so Samantha tries to explain how she was found unconscious outside, but a distrustful Jody demands to know where Kevin is. Samantha has no idea who she is talking about, so Jody immediately storms out. In another scene, gunshots erupt in the distance, startling Tom so badly that he spills all the gasoline. A few moments later, another shot rings out, and Tom frantically yells to see if anyone is around, but there's no response. Meanwhile, Jody returns to the cabin, upset that there's no phone or bathroom. She assumes this is Samantha's place, but Samantha clarifies she got stuck here after running out of fuel. Just then, Tom arrives and is surprised to see a new girl. Jody introduces herself. He asks for her story, and Jody replies that she's from Detroit and got into a fight with her boyfriend, who kicked her out of the car. Tom tells her she can stay, but needs to start helping out by tomorrow, to which she agrees. That night, Jody has a nightmare of being tied down and injected by someone. The next day, she and Samantha start a friendly conversation, but it quickly turns into an argument when they disagree on their location. Jody is sure they are in Wisconsin, while Samantha insists they are in New Hampshire. Meanwhile, Tom is deep in the woods, marking trees to measure his travel. But to his horror, he finds himself back at the cabin despite walking in a straight line. He runs into Jody, who insists Samantha is crazy for thinking they are in New Hampshire. This surprises Tom, and he runs to talk to Samantha. Later, the three of them gather and begin debating their location. Things get worse when Tom surprisingly claims they are in South Dakota. This deepens their confusion, as each is certain about their location. Tom senses something is seriously wrong and asks the girls if they are absolutely sure of where they think they are. He warns them that time is running out, and they will soon be short on food and water. He suggests they leave tomorrow and walk as far as they can, and the girls agree. That night, Tom has a nightmare involving a firearm. The next morning, the trio leaves the cabin early. On the way, Jody shares that her mother died the day she was born, and she was raised by her grandparents. Moments later, Jody trips on something and falls, and a wad of cash falls out of her pocket. A surprised Tom demands to know how she got so much money, but she simply says she earned it working with her boyfriend. Meanwhile, Samantha's attention is drawn to a mysterious door on the ground. Tom uses his axe to break the lock, and upon entering, they are shocked to see it's a military fallout shelter. They discover a lot of canned food and vintage wine, as well as a map. Samantha notices everything is written in German, and suspects they must be in Poland. Jody asks how she knows, so Samantha explains her father was German, but her mother taught her the language since her father died in the war. Jody is surprised by the coincidence, and confesses her father also died in the war. The trio packs the food and drinks before leaving the bunker, but moments later, they find themselves back at the same cabin. This shocks them, as they were sure they had walked in a straight line far away from it. That night, during dinner, Tom opens up and shares that no one would notice if he disappeared. He reveals his mother was executed, and he was raised in a South Dakota orphanage. Later, Samantha asks to see Jody's wad of cash. Jody takes it out and admits she robs gas stations with her boyfriend, leaving Samantha in shock. Jody justifies her actions by saying she grew up with nothing. However, upon inspecting the bills, Samantha thinks it's a joke because the money was printed in 1984, which she says is in the future. This surprises Jody. When she asks Samantha what year she thinks it is, Samantha reveals it's 1962. When asked the same question, Jody shows her jacket, leaving Samantha stunned. Just then, Tom enters, and when the women ask him what year it is, he surprisingly claims it is 2011. The women reveal what years they are from, and Tom wonders if they are joking. Suddenly, a loud gunshot rings out from outside, adding to their horror. Tom looks and sees a man holding a rifle, so they go out and cautiously ask for his help. But the man raises his rifle and speaks in German. Tom quickly drops his axe, but the German man knocks him unconscious. The next morning, Tom wakes up with his hands and feet tied and sees the women are also tied to chairs. The German man is gone. They assume they have time traveled to World War II. Samantha asks Tom if time travel was invented by 2011, but he clarifies that his time isn't much more advanced. Moments later, the German returns and unties Tom, aggressively pushing him out of the cabin. The man beats Tom in the woods and eventually ties him to a tree. He then returns to the cabin and angrily asks where the women are from. His gaze falls on a locket around Jody's neck, and he furiously demands to know how she got it. Samantha translates that it belonged to Jody's mother, but the German doesn't believe her and raises his gun. At this point, Samantha reveals she has a similar locket. The confused German pulls out his own identical locket, which contains a photograph of a woman Samantha recognizes as her mother. Later, the German leads the two women to Tom. As they discuss the situation, it turns out Tom has untied himself. The scene cuts back to the cabin, where the German guy is now unconscious and tied up. Samantha reveals the woman in the locket is her mother, while Jody claims it's her grandmother. Samantha also mentions her father's name was Hans Neumann. After checking the German guy's papers, it turns out they match. When Samantha asks Jody her date of birth, she reveals it is November 11th, 1962, the exact date Samantha's baby is due. The room falls silent as the devastating truth sinks in. Samantha is actually Jody's mother, and she is devastated by the horror of knowing her husband will die in the war. After she leaves the cabin crying, Tom drops a bombshell and tells Jody that she is actually his mother. Jody calls him a liar, pointing out that he didn't have a locket, but Tom claims he did have one but didn't bring it. He reveals his mother was a criminal who robbed gas stations, shot a cashier, and murdered his father Kevin, leading to her arrest and execution. The weight of this brutal reality hits Jody, and she also runs out of the cabin. The women catch up in the forest, and Samantha is devastated to learn she will die in childbirth. She asks about Adam, and Jody reveals he will die fighting in the Vietnam War, leaving her with Adam's abusive parents. She shows Samantha brutal scars on her body. Later, Samantha approaches her father Hans and explains everything. As she unties him, Tom warns that Hans could be dangerous, but Samantha informs Tom that Hans is actually her father. She pleads for his trust, and he agrees, but the moment he is free, Hans grabs his guns and runs out of the cabin.
At that moment, Samantha remembers her nightmare and shares it with the others. In her dream, she was alone in labor while Adam was overseas, and the ambulance didn't arrive in time. Tom then shares his dream about the priest who abused him, and how he shot the priest before shooting himself. Jody also recalls a dream of being executed for murdering Kevin, meaning they all dreamt of their deaths. However, Tom says these things haven't happened yet, so they have time to change them. They realize the chain of events starts with Hans's death, so they decide to stop it. They go to the bunker to check the map, and Samantha reveals her father died in a bombing raid in Willen, Poland, where they are now, and today is the day he will die. Tom theorizes that if Hans doesn't die, his wife won't remarry. Samantha will have her mother to take her to the hospital during labor and will survive. Jody will grow up to be a good woman, and Tom will grow up with his real mother. The group decides to get Hans to the fallout shelter when the bombing happens. They return to the cabin where Hans has managed to make radio contact. They try to warn him about the bombing, but he refuses to believe them and runs outside to complete his mission. Tom tries to stop him, and the two men get into a fierce fight, during which this happens. Seeing this, Hans runs off, leaving the other two to tend to the wounded Jody. Tom starts to panic, insisting that if Jody dies, he will never exist. He runs to find Hans while Samantha stays by her daughter's side. After a while, Tom catches up to Hans, who attacks him. The two engage in an intense fight, after which Hans flees again. But Tom realizes that no matter where they run, they end up back at the cabin, so he heads there. The two meet again at the cabin where Jody is on the verge of death. Hans starts shooting at Tom, but Tom begins to slowly fade away. He disappears completely as Jody takes her final breath, as her death means his existence will cease. Seeing this, Samantha furiously approaches Hans, blaming him for everything.
But there's no time to waste as several aircraft fly overhead, ready to drop missiles. Samantha again pleads with her father to save himself, not just for him, but for all his descendants. He finally believes her, but as they run for the shelter, several missiles fall from the sky, causing Samantha to hit her head on a rock and lose consciousness. Luckily, her father carries her into the shelter and manages to close the door just in time. As missiles continue to strike, Hans notices Samantha's existence flickering before she disappears completely. Elsewhere, Jody's dead body also vanishes in front of the cabin. Hans then looks at his wife's photo, but just then, a large missile hits the cabin and destroys everything. Time begins to reset, and everything that happened plays out in reverse. The scene then cuts to 1985, where we see Jody in the store just like at the beginning of the movie, but her appearance has changed, and she looks sophisticated. After paying, Jody leaves the store and notices Kevin, who is now with another girlfriend. The couple enters the store, pulls out a gun, and threatens the cashier for money. The scene plays out exactly as before. The cashier agrees to open the safe, but warns that they won't be able to handle what's inside, just before a gunshot is heard. The scene then cuts to Jody, who now lives in a luxurious house. We see a newspaper headline announcing the recent death of Hans Neumann, a revered war veteran and philanthropist. Jody then approaches her mother Samantha, who appears much older, and they walk to the beach together to scatter Hans's ashes. The movie ends on a bittersweet note, revealing that Tom may never exist in this timeline, as he was the son of Jody and her robber boyfriend, whose paths have now diverged into separate worlds.